Howdy, howdy, howdy. Right, how do you do this with the old charger in? Yeah, this might work. Oh, yes. What's going on? Caitlin, Firefox, red hot cherry peppers, Eve and Langdale, Mr. Stevie Rao, Miss Rocktavia, Miss Josh Speers, requesting to be in the live video. Noah, don't say that. You're the coolest. Deborah, hello. What's going on, Zavi? Please come in with the our theme tune. Josh, do the theme tune.
Yes.
Theme tune, bro. Where's the theme tune?
I missed it. I can't. I'm on. We're doing a special outdoors edition of.
Shelf isolation. Shelf isolation. I
Perfect.
want to start off by saying hello, beautiful boy.
Hello, sir.
And I am. I don't know what cheers would be in Spanish, but Happy Cinco de Mayo, my friend.
Salud.
Salud.
That's the
my
way.
Nice 15 quid tequila. I honestly spent the last couple of hours like whipping up a like Mexican meal with my housemates.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, baby.
I ended up with like 2 full on my like produce app for the like imperfect produce that I get shipped of all the like ugly fruits and vegetables every week.
Oh, that's so cool.
I selected poblano chilies and I said I wanted 2. And they gave me 2 bags. So it's gonna be Cinco de Mayo for me with poblano chilies for weeks.
Yeah, shit. I
good way to do
saw a
it.
comment from Deborah Simonite saying Tuesday devotion to you both. Thanks for sticking with us.
Thanks for being here.
Is this our 4th episode now?
This could be 4 weeks in a row. Is that right?
Yeah, man.
No sign of slowing down, everybody. We are cruising.
Thank you to everyone for joining us. Obviously, just a disclaimer, this format of what we're doing, essentially 2 men talking about books together, isn't completely, completely maximized on the format on the platform of Instagram Live. So, in the interest of everyone enjoying themselves, you're in for the long haul. Strap in, everyone. Maybe just put your phone on the side, turn up a little bit, go and do the washing up, just listen to some people.
Just hang out for the chat.
There's some dudes on Cinco de Mayo. Okay.
Exactly.
Here we go.
Hello,
and welcome to another episode of Shelf Isolation, a book club for our times. 2 musicians, myself and Joshua here, taking on the vast and largely unexplored world of rock and roll literature from our respective bedrooms on either side of the planet. Autobiographies, biographies, novels, exposés, memoirs, meditations, histories, critiques. The rock canon has it all. And we will be diving in head first, drawing from our own experiences. You can tell I just wrote this up. Our own experiences as musicians to try and make sense of it all. I am Matt, a lead singer of a mediocre rock and roll 4-piece called The Amazons.
And I'm Josh Speers, lead singer of a horrendously bad band named Joshua Speers, based here in Los Angeles. Thank you, Jackie, for the shout out about the album release day coming out. I am putting out a record on Friday.
Hell yeah.
Plugging there. And thanks, Connor. Miss you, dude.
Here we are. In the comments, me, Elton John. So, hang on. 2 seconds. Boom. Check this out. Technology. Oh, you've got it today. Fantastic.
I got it.
That's great. That is really great. So, yes, today's book, we've been reading for the last week. It's Elton John, me. Maybe we should get a shot of both of us with the book.
Us. Me and us.
Me and us. and we've been reading for a week now. We got up to about chapter 8. If you've just joined us, basically Elton John, the autobiography is me. He put it out last year. He used a ghostwriter, but a lot of these people do.
Sure.
Basically, the premise is just like a chronological. This is like a total tell-all, gossip-heavy autobiography of Elton John's life. Basically, we haven't got to the end of it. As I said, we're on chapter 8, but we definitely come from the start. And I guess the reason why we're talking about it in Shelf Isolation is because obviously Elton John is one of the greatest and biggest stars of all time. And especially judging by the book so far, he definitely is the antithesis of a lot of oh god, is antithesis the right word to use?
For continue.
Well, he definitely sums up the decade of the decadence and debauchery of the 1970s.
The antithesis would mean he would be the opposite of that. So
he's definitely not the opposite of that.
You're looking for is the archetype.
He's the archetype. He's
There it is.
He's the queen of
catalyst. Great word.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we're talking about it, and
beautiful.
It's been a pretty good read so far, I think.
It's a great read. A great read. Something I find too that I'm thinking about is how important it is to read the biographies of the top shelf, like the biggest of the big. Because with someone like Elton John, I feel like you just think, yeah, you know, of course he's there, he's on the radio, he's everywhere, it's Elton John. But when you actually get down to like the minutia of it, and you start to understand his backstory and his early story, he's just a normal band guy. He's an NBD. He's a normal band dude. He's he's an NBD, which I think is the best, because then you actually start to hear the songs as songs instead of these like untouchable pillars of like music that never were always there and can like never be touched. I think it humanizes in such a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we want to talk about today, loosely, I think you mentioned it on one of your Instagram stories earlier, is a couple of themes. One of the things I wanted to start off with was Elton's pub shows, and I wanted to talk about maybe our like top 1 worst fucking shit show we've ever before.
Yeah.
And 2, I just wanted to talk about like what's in a name. Obviously, he was called Reggie Dwight in the beginning, and I wanted to kind of explore why he changed his name, and then why that was kind of like a big trend at the time.
Yes.
What else did you want to talk about?
Definitely the names and the shit gigs. And I'd love to talk about his musical journey, which kind of ties into his history as like a gigging bar band musician. But then a little bit about like how he is the product of all these experiences, and kind of where his musical journey, if it changes at all once he makes it.
Yeah.
How his identity as a musician in the public discourse changes, at least as the book presents it, once he becomes famous. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, let's start with bad gigs. I have one in my mind. Basically, it's inspired by where's the it's a particular pub that Elton plays in.
Yes.
That kind of inspired this talking point. I forgot what was it called. It was the something hotel.
Something inn that's not actually an inn, or
yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Shit, I don't have it in front of me.
Terrible.
Horrible.
So basically, I wanted to talk about that, and how there's one that kind of goes in, like really has kind of burned into my mind in the same vein, where Elton's playing, or the band are playing, and the like audience are almost doing whatever the hell they want. They're kind of like out of mind of their own. There was this gig that we did right at the beginning of the Amazon's kind of like touring life, where we played up in Middlesbrough at this place called the Q Bar, KU Bar, Northwood Hills Hotel. Thank you, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Beautiful.
And basically, Northwood Hills Hotel in the book is a place where Elton kind of like cuts his teeth and plays all these covers and gigs and stuff like once a week. Gets pretty good money from tips, but he pretty much every night he plays there, it like sends into a fight where he has to jump out of the window. Which actually, did you manage to see the film? Maybe
I still haven't seen it. That's what I'll see it between this one and the next.
Yeah. So there's a moment in the film where it actually transitions from young Elton to slightly older Elton, where he like it all descends into a massive brawl, and he like gets out, and then just this whole dance scene comes back with the older Elton. Anyways.
Wow.
So made me think of our Amazon shows. And
yes.
Middlesbrough. Have you heard of Middlesbrough? It's in the
I haven't.
North of the country, and it's kind of close to Newcastle. And there was a place called Q Bar, and basically it was like a kind of club, and there was a light up like disco floor, like a kind of light up dance floor, like Saturday Night Fever essentially.
Incredible.
Like
yeah.
Northern England Saturday Night Fever, and we like played on it, and the worst sound of all time, and it was absolutely rammed. So we come on stage like, okay, it's not much of a stage, but this could be cool. Like the place is rammed.
Yep.
And it was the weirdest situation ever where we would fucking play, like rock out and be greeted instead of applause. It would just be they would just carry on what they were doing. It was the strangest gig.
Weird.
It was like we were not there.
That's a bad one.
We actually then the promoter got us like pizza, and we just ate it in this repurposed kitchen. It was like now some storage room, and we just sat there eating this terrible pizza. And then the funny thing was actually we went back about 6 months later for another tour, but this time it was completely empty, which we preferred because there was like 10 people who were there, and they were actually watching us, and they
cared. I played there are two that come to mind for me. The one was playing a venue where there were no toilet seats.
Nice.
In the entire venue, no toilet seats.
Wow.
That was
They're not
bizarre.
Trust people.
I guess like people kept tearing them off or something like that. I'm not really sure. But then the other one was my band in college. Right after college, I booked us a long run down the east coast of the United States, and we showed up in Charlotte, North Carolina to play a big brewery, and we got there, and the place was packed. And, of course, the person who we booked the show with had no idea who we were, or the person who booked the show was... hold on one sec. Augie? Awesome. Thank you. Perfect. Electrician. This is a window into our real lives, everybody.
This is real shit.
So we got double booked. We get there. We got double booked with trivia. So in the giant room where everybody is, there's trivia happening. And they were like, we didn't know there was a band, so we can't pay you, and you can just set up here. Basically where the hostess of the restaurant would be, when people come in, they're like, oh, yeah, I can put you at a table for two. So we were right by the exit, crammed into the hostess stand. So as everyone left from the trivia, where there were like 200 people in there, they would kind of like, sorry, and look at us and have to like kind of move our guitar player out of the way in order to open the door. And that's why I hate trivia. I think trivia is so stupid, and I will never participate in trivia because of that. The worst.
At least these are slightly safer than the gigs that were kind of featured in the book, at least.
Oh my god.
Okay, so what I also wanted to talk about, what's in a name?
What's in a name? What a great Shakespeare quote, you beautiful British boy.
Yeah, I know. I felt there was something about Reggie Dwight that I understand that he might not have felt is the most rock and roll name. But I guess with him, from the book, did you ever read in the first 8 chapters the reason why he changed his name to Elton John? Because this is something that's covered in the film.
It's in the prologue, where
Right.
he talks about, let me grab him, he's moving out of the sun. He's leaving Bluesology, his first band. It's on page 7.
Mm.
And he says, I told John in Bluesology I was leaving after a gig in Scotland in December. It was fine, no hard feelings. Like I said, John was an incredibly generous man. I decided to change my name. For some reason, I remember thinking I had to come up with something really quickly. I suppose it was all symbolic of a clean break and a fresh start, which I think makes, for the person that he becomes, the kind of like over-the-top, gregarious character, to me, it makes so much sense that it's like you need a new name in order to become something kind of like beyond human.
What I find interesting with Elton is that he keeps on referring when he's in regards to his own behaviour, especially as the more success comes and the more entrenched the name Elton John becomes. And the more really that he should start owning that name. Like he at the beginning of the 70s, he says that he legally changed it.
Right.
But the more and more he starts kind of reacting to situations with drugs and debauchery and success, with the kind of notion that he's not Elton John. He's not the person that the people think he is. He's actually becoming more and more Reggie Dwight. And that's like he's facing all these situations and kind of processing all these situations as if he's like still a teenager back in, you know, where he's Pinner. Yeah. The most residential suburban.
You know, it's funny. It's interesting because like Elton John Reggie Dwight isn't. They almost have the same kind of ring to it. Reg Dwight, Elton John. Like there's nothing over the top about Elton John as a name, like Ringo Starr. Or Jamie Foxx. Like these names that you're just like, ooh, that is slick. So it's kind of it's an interesting change. Sorry, I cut out. It's an interesting change.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well. Like it's like a Bob Dylan,
right?
Or a you know, these aren't like in itself. It's not Ziggy Stardust or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. But it still fits him.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what's interesting, about Elton John is that his name change almost feels like it would have happened anyway, whether he's a rock star or not, because whether he became a rock star of huge fame and success, it still felt like he wanted to run away from who he is, no matter what was going to happen.
Right, he had to.
He can't seem to shift it, and obviously it remains to be seen as we go further into the book about whether he can shift it or whether he can like be okay with almost two sides of his personality, because you can't completely. Maybe there's a sense of disappointment in that he can't completely drown out or bury Reggie Dwight with all the fame and all the success and stuff, and all the money and all the shopping and all that kind of stuff.
Someone commenting saying, Roctavia saying, I love how humble he was. I can relate to how unassuming he started. It's true. He has made the complete, from like humble beginnings to the peak of excess in
I keep on
shopping
thinking about
fame.
The back of the book, where it says the great thing about rock and roll is that someone like me can be a star.
Yeah.
Which totally, and obviously we'll talk more about the film Rocket Man, but which is like very similar, but there's some big differences in the narrative, which I think would be really interesting to explore next week.
Cool. I love that.
But there's this whole kind of notion at the beginning, really setting the scene, where he's given advice by people that he tours with, or like more established artists, where it's like, oh, you don't become rich and famous or whatever. It's all about creating someone who does like. It's not like forget the person that you are in order to become the person that you're going to be in Hollywood narrative fashion.
Right. Well, it's interesting because like people that haven't changed their names even complete the same process. Like Bruce Springsteen, a very ordinary name by any standards, but he becomes the character Bruce Springsteen, which is like who he kind of like dressing up like his father almost and becoming this like separate version of himself. So it's like it's the same process, just with his own name, just a totally different sense of self.
Why is that? Why do you think there was so much of a trend of that in the, let's call it 50s to, well, I don't know when it would have not become a trend, really. Maybe sometime in the 90s, because we still have the likes of U2 or Red Hot Chili Peppers who are adopting stage names.
Sure.
And I'm wondering when that came out of fashion, why it came out of fashion, and whether it's something that should be explored.
I wonder. Yeah, I think about like, I think about the whole nature of music. For so many of these people, and so many people still, it's about escaping. It's about getting out. Music and the arts in general. So it's like that completes the full process of escape. Escape is if you can not only get out of your situation, but become a greater version of yourself, or a self that you would rather be. I also think that there are fewer examples then of people who made it, who were just ordinary folk. Like now today, it's all about being, which I think is so beautiful. We talked about this, I think, with Debbie, about like being your most genuine self, and the person that is on stage is also the person that's like brushing their teeth in the bathroom, and you share all of these things. There are more examples of that, but I think in the earlier days of popular music, it was only about this like performance and like who you were on stage and being over the top.
Yeah, it's about escaping that painfully, what he would probably describe as a painfully ordinary experience. And I guess it's almost like providing that to the listeners, to like help them escape and take them on this yellow brick road, or introduce them to new characters and take them on a journey. Whilst now, even the social media element has probably really leveled everything between the artist and the fan, like the audience. And I think to an extent, like there could be an argument that lives now, like the most ordinary life now, is actually not that ordinary, because kind of crazy supernatural things happen, like pandemics and crazy people being in charge of countries, and us talking to each other on phones over 1,000 miles. Like that's not ordinary. That's not grey. It's not like kind of grey post-war Britain that the Stones and whoever explode out of and all that kind of stuff. It's not really like that. It's people maybe looking for someone more relatable, and if there's maybe initially in the beginning, if artists try and exercise any kind of mystique, that it almost gets unnoticed.
That's true. I wonder if there will be post-pandemic a kind of like great outburst similar to like the post-war boom of musicians and culture, and this like kind of giant response to that. I'm excited to see how that unfolds.
What was really, this has nothing to do with Elton John or Shelf Isolation or books by any means whatsoever, but I was thinking earlier how with coronavirus, it's kind of, I don't know how useful or how much I would like to hear complete albums released by artists next year about coronavirus. In the way that I don't really say I wasn't there after the Second World War, but I'm not sure how much music was about the war,
Right.
because like in, like talk about a 5-year time frame after the war ended, for
Yep.
example. It's more like everyone went through it, so
Right.
like why would you talk about it?
Right.
It's almost like you needed that kind of a younger generation to talk to it.
Right. Yeah, let's get away
Yeah,
from
you
it.
know what I mean by that? Like,
Yeah, totally.
what's there to
Like,
say? Like,
or and it's also
we're
like
aware.
that's the last thing we want to think about right now. We want to talk
Yeah,
about like rocking around the clock, or just like shaking our hips and things, getting away and some
yeah. Rock and roll
joyful.
music. It's not.
Hmm.
They're not like mid-50s rock and roll. Like, especially like Cliff Richard and the Shadows, for example. They're not going like rationing sucks. Like, they're not
Mm,
writing about that.
right.
Like, oh, my
Yeah.
dad doesn't speak about the war because he's been like
Right.
completely paralyzed with PTSD or whatever. They're talking about like escapism in like the most basic forms, like,
Right.
cars, going out to the diner, going
Mm.
dancing, that girl, who kissed another boy,
Yep. It's
which I
just like
find really interesting.
it's embodying it instead of like actually spelling it out.
Yeah,
Something I was thinking about just with the names before we move on. I'm fine when an artist has a pseudonym, when they have a different name, that there's their stage name. I'm fine.
yeah,
That's cool. It's usually a good name. When an artist goes back to their original name, I feel like I'm always a little bit like, you really couldn't take it anymore, could you? Or
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
you you had to change
It's
it, huh? You're not getting enough attention. You need your own name in there now.
it's like, but seriously, this is what I really think.
Yeah,
This is
like
the real me now.
Diplo is going by his real name now, I think,
What?
and or at
Why
least
would
on
you do
Twitter,
that?
that's his name.
Oh, okay.
Things like that. You're like, what's going on here? Like what? Or like the artist formerly known as Chet Faker is Nick Murphy, and then you're just like, all right, man, hey, you got to make a decision and you got to stick to it.
Right.
You got,
Yeah. Prince. When he just did the symbol,
yeah.
big Prince, so he can.
But see, Prince, yeah, exactly. Prince
But he
created that.
returned to
Now everybody afterwards, it's like Prince already did this, dude. You can't do that. Prince did it.
I want to just pull up Caitlin TXFF.
Mm-hmm.
The birds tweeting in the background is very therapeutic. You should do these outside more often.
I think it might be an outside kind of day. I lost power in part of my apartment, so the electrician was here working on
Oh
stuff.
no!
So
Oh, that's why. Okay.
I'm out here, but this is where I usually spend my mornings, so this is perfect.
Love it. You know what? You do it more outside, and you know what? We're gonna take Shelf Isolation to Los Angeles and do the whole thing outside. We're gonna film it. We're gonna make it a podcast. We're gonna do IG live in the same garden.
It's gonna be perfect. We're gonna have a studio audience. It's gonna be
Exactly.
special.
It's
One
gonna be
day.
like a Disney film. What else were we gonna talk about?
We talking about the musical evolution a little bit. So something that I'm interested in
Yes.
is Elton. The first couple chapters are all about his seeing Elvis and his mother introducing him to Elvis and his like years of shedding and practicing, and he is playing in shitty bar bands, and then he goes to the Royal Academy of Music where he's taking classical piano lessons, and then he gets famous, and there's so little about the music other than we were in the studio, wrote this song. As you pointed out to me earlier, like your song is like, yeah, I wrote that before breakfast and just came kind of falling right out of me.
It's
That's
Rocket
wild.
Man, Amy, and
Mona Lisa's
Manhattan,
right.
and he does it before breakfast. He just whacks them out because Bernie gives him the lyrics that evening. He kind of puts them on the piano stand in the morning and smashes them out.
Which is insane. And I loved your theory of like the reason you can take so many drugs and just go as crazy as he did the rest of the time is because like when you just like a song like that shits out of you,
Yeah.
and then you just, of course, your day's done. Breakfast, you clock out at 11 a.m.
Yeah, he didn't have to slave over anything. Like, and he does albums the exact same way, where he like gets bored if they're in there for more than like 5 days.
There's something that is, I don't know if it's frustrating to me or difficult to me about um, the distance he creates between himself and the person because of the new name Elton John. There's a kind of distance implied there, and then the fact that the songs are not about his own life; they're written by someone else. There's something in there that to me, I'm thinking like, oh, I wish, but I want to believe. I want to see my musicians and my icons as like living the songs, I think.
Yeah,
And there's something not there.
I agree, and I think I've read a couple of reviews about the book before, and they like from a journalist point of view, from a fan point of view, they're absolutely loving it. But we're talking in Shelf Isolation from a musician's point of view, and for your song, Rocket Man and Tiny Dancer, for example, some of his big hits, his enduring legacy, for him to kind of almost not even talk about making that, or like really brush over the process of writing it, creating it and stuff, even though he didn't write the lyrics, of course, but even to go into a little bit of detail about what the hell Bernie was talking about,
right?
Or even just to go, I don't know what you could say, but just let in on his process a little bit more.
Well, and that's like, maybe that's just like, as fans, we want there to be a story to it. Like we want it.
Reason.
Yeah, we want there to be this like, and then, I had this idea and there I was, and the song came to me or something like that. Instead of like, got the lyrics, sat down, put a couple chords together, and because we so emotionally connect with those songs and they're so important to us. But
you want that reciprocated by the origin story.
Right. I do think, we don't want it to feel like someone just like doing their job. But that's also like, as I think as like artists, we want to believe that there's some like greater plan or a greater story. And I think it's okay that there isn't.
Yeah.
It's still a great song.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that happens a lot of the time, really. John Lennon, I know that a lot of the earlier Beatles stuff, he kind of doesn't really care about that much.
Right.
Or he said, we did this in an afternoon, or whoever wrote Wichita Lineman, before Glenn Campbell recorded it, he just said it's just another, he said, I need to grab who actually wrote it, but there's a whole book about it, and the strapline's basically, I wrote 1,000 songs and this was just one of them. But
doesn't that bum you out when you're like, when an artist hates the song of theirs that you love?
Yeah.
That's so defeating. You're like, and is that the duty of the artist, that you have to like give, part of what you give your fans is like allowing it to feel like it's this magical thing?
Yeah.
Like, I would never, like, as a musician, I would never want, the songs of mine that I don't connect with as much, or I would never want to be like, oh yeah, that song sucks, or try and like take away that like special thing that someone might have with that feeling they have with that song.
Oh yeah, but sometimes it is hard sometimes when someone will bring up like a song from your first EP and they're like, why don't you play that song? And you're like, it's shit. That's
right, because everybody has different tastes in music. It's like, that's just part of it. I think it's like part of the duty. It's almost like, as reading this book, we're kind of like, shut up and play the hits. Like, we want him to just like give us the thing that we want, not like what you're trying to do, like not the story you're trying to tell. Like, give us the thing we want you to tell us.
Yeah,
which is more. Not. We want more. Like, you tell us about that song. We want to know that there's a story. We want you to make us feel good about why we love that song, instead of just like the real story, which is he was addicted to shopping. He was addicted to cocaine. He faked a suicide for attention once, arguably twice. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of observations. It was hard in the first 8 chapters of this to almost like draw out themes that we could talk about in the wider context, like rock and roll.
Right.
And it is absolutely chock-a-block filled with outrageous anecdotes. One of my favorites being they're up in a hotel suite in New York. It's Elton and John Lennon, and they're getting through a big old Scarface pile of cocaine when the door knocks, and it's Andy Warhol trying to get in, and Elton John looks through it like the little
people,
and he's like, "Fucking hell, it's Andy Warhol," and John Lennon's like, "Nah, mate," and he's like, "Why? It's Andy Warhol," and he's like, Lennon says, "Oh, has he got that camera again?" And Elton says, looks through the window, "Yes, he does." He's like, "Well, do you want him coming in here taking photos when you've got icicles of coke hanging out of your nose?" And he said,
incredible.
And then they got back to work. There's a couple other ones which are really, what I find really interesting is that there's, compared to Debbie Harry's autobiography, he still lays it out, and but he gives it gives all these like situations. What I'm trying to kind of talk about is the suicide attempts. He does a couple of suicide attempts in the first 8 chapters of the book, basically, and instead of just brushing past them, he'll flesh it out a little bit. But instead of making it this really emotional and dark thing, he basically just says that he was acting like an idiot. The first time being he gets engaged to a woman when actually, of course, he's not attracted to her in that way. And instead of just like breaking up with her, he like turns the gas on. Everyone's in the flat. He turns the gas on and sits in the kitchen to like poison himself with the window open. And he just kind of comments on how pathetic he is, which I thought was kind of hilarious. There's so much like gossip in this book.
It's so juicy in that way.
Like music, creative direction. It's like crazy gossip, basically. If you want that, then this is like film.
Which is brilliant. I think other books lack that. Other autobiographies lack that in a lot of times. Or a lot of times you're reading and you're like, man, but I want to feel the like rock and roll. I want to feel the like 70s moment happening.
Yeah, and he delivers in spades.
He delivers. But I do wish there was more songwriting, songcraft. Does Bernie Taupin have a biography?
He probably does. I mean, Bernie's story is actually told quite a lot in Rocket Man, which is the film, which is really good. Let's watch that next week.
So watch it for next week. We're going to be talking about that next week. A question that was asked, or should we open it up to questions? What do you say?
Let's open up the questions. I think there's people who've been reading the book, which is really, really cool.
There was a question asked by C.S. Il, a.k.a. J. Tar. I hope I pronounced that correctly. About the differences between American and British record executives, and how in the book the Americans are so chatty and bragging about all the stops that they've pulled out for his debut in America versus the very withdrawn English executives. I see truth in that.
I see truth in that, and actually there was a couple of members of the team in the US Elton John story that reminded me of
here.
All good?
Yeah.
That reminded me of a couple of members of our team in the States.
Nice.
It's very like, we're going to do this. We're going to, we're going to kill it. All this kind of crap. It's like,
it's going to be huge.
But I like it. I mean,
yeah,
I'm into it. I love that shit. You take everything with a pinch of salt, and I think he's talking about his experiences in Los Angeles as well. And I think that also plays a part. Our record label Island is based in New York, so a lot of that, they're pretty cool. They're pretty chill people. They're pretty
in Los Angeles, when he arrives, they get him a double-decker bus to drive from the airport through Los Angeles. which is incredible. I wish there was a bit more of that going on,
Yeah,
as absurd and ridiculous as it is.
more kind of
So
obnoxious publicity stunts.
there's, but that's like, he's sort of embarrassed by it, but that is, you could make the argument that so much of a very kind of negative argument would be all of his outfits and antics are an obnoxious publicity stunt,
Mm,
which, hey, it worked. It
mm.
totally worked. And also, like, when you're playing Dodger Stadium, um, you know, bring out the sequins. You like go big. You gotta like put on the full nines.
Especially in the mid 70s when you don't have huge video technology and all that kind of stuff.
Huge, all that sound systems. Like you gotta give them something. I also think that like that is worth the price of a ticket. That is worth more than the ticket prices today for shows today, when people just like kind of phone it in, or they're trying to be
Mm,
too cool or something like that.
mm. Jen says, do you think the moment he enters that clothing shop was pivotal in his Elton John transformation? I think there's a couple of moments like that.
Right.
Even like one of the team members in the UK that dresses flamboyantly and
Right.
turns Elton's head.
Right.
Yeah, it does. I mean, there's so many little moments that kind of create an artist like Elton, especially someone who, like Elton, kind of is always moving forward. There's moments where that can also be kind of difficult when he like changes his band. He has to like call them up.
Right.
But this is seen. I think there's much more of a license with that, with like solo artists, of course, the likes of Bowie and
Yeah.
Springsteen's been pretty, and even Petty's been pretty loyal to their band members, to be fair.
Totally consistent. Springsteen's been, except for the big man Clarence Clemens, who passed away.
Yeah.
It's been the same band the whole way through.
I think with especially
Wow.
back in the 70s, if you wanted to make a meaningful stylistic change, I guess the personnel of your band probably makes
Right.
a much bigger difference than some plugins on Logic or
Yes.
or
Great
whatever.
point. Yeah, or even like necessarily the producer. Yeah, I think that's true. And he does. This something I really appreciated about Elton John, though, is that he seems to be the one who really made those phone calls to the band saying, it's, I'll give you guys a year severance pay, but no more
Yeah.
shows, and this is it. Versus like Tom Petty with his band, he had his manager have all those discussions, and he was completely, I'd say, a coward in his dealings with his oldest friends and companions.
For sure. Okay, sweet.
All right.
Yeah, sweet. Let's keep on going with the book. Let's do another like 10 chapters or so. It's probably the biggest book that we've done so far.
It's quite a book.
It's quite the tome, quite the epic. Lots to get through, and what we can do next week is talk about the Rocket Man film. So everyone in isolation, fellow hunker downers,
watch it.
Fellow shut-ins. Have you seen that guy Leslie Jordan? The old like.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's so great.
We'll watch the book. Send questions. I love getting that question in my DMs about shelf isolation. I think about shelf isolation every day of the week. So
every damn day.
So send your questions.
Yes. Rocket Man the film, the book. Let's carry on. We'll post what page we're reading up to in the next couple of days. And yeah, if you haven't read the book or seen the film, you've got a week to catch up. We'll be carrying on same time next week. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for being here, y'all.
Thank you, y'all. And happy Cinco de Mayo. I'm going to refill the...
I'm going to go start drinking.
Get the tequilas going. And I'm going to get in the kitchen and cook up some fish tacos. And you know what? I'm not going to do an Instagram story about it because I'm not a professional chef, motherfuckers.
Well, I'll be posting all the food on mine, so follow me at... Oh, yeah, look at that. All right.
That's from South by Southwest.
Austin. Beautiful.
Rest in peace, by the way.
Thank you all.
Hey, this has been a long one.
This has been a good one.
We've done about 8 chapters.
Everybody's here still. Love it. You guys are the best holdouts.
You will be rewarded at some point.
We love you.
Loyal followers.
All right.
Buonanotte.
Buonanotte.
What? That's Italiano, isn't it? Or is that?
Cheers, salud, and buonanotte. All right. Bye.
Bye.